Hello, I'm Jordan, and I'd like to thank you for coming back to visit me here in episode 5 of Unwarranted Doom WAD Reviews, the series where I play Doom WADs and give them an unwarranted review. Today's final review is for the 3-level speed map set A WAD for Children by Arthur. Did Arthur succeed in his mission to put training wheels on the classic Doom formula? Well, let's get into the review. For the final review, we are going again to break it down into 3 categories ranked 1 through 10, that being visual design, gameplay, and originality, exploring how each level contributed to the final score that is graded A, B, C, D, or F, based on an average score out of 30. And if you've been following along, that means you already know the score, but for those of you who don't and those who wish to hear me break things down into a little bit more detail, please stick around, and at the end we will have today's final grade for A WAD for Children. Let's get into visual design first. For Map 1 Caco Prison, I gave a 7, and for Map 2 Around the Tower and Map 3 Little Monster Condo, I gave an 8. Visuals overall, I think in this WAD can be best described as perfectly competent, if not leaning a little more on the boring side. I'll say level to level there's a decent variety. For just 3 maps, each map does feel like it stands out visually from the next, but looking at the levels individually, I didn't see anything within each one that seemed very inspired when it came to texture usage or architecture. And while that's not very surprising for a set of speed maps, I do cut the creators some slack for that, but part of the speed mapping challenge that inherently makes it a challenge is to try to do the best you can with a limited amount of time, maybe with a limited amount of resources as well that you're focusing on, rather than using the speed map challenge almost as an excuse to make something with lackluster design with the intention of maybe it being forgiven. I'm not at all implying that's what happened here with this creator, but just something to think about, something to know. With the small scale of each level, I think I was expecting each map to have a little bit more of a set piece or a focal point to it that kind of dominated the structure of the map and maybe gave it a little more personality. So visually, I think all of the maps were very solid, but yeah, not very inspired in my opinion. So now let's talk about gameplay. For Map 1, I gave a 9, for Map 2, I gave a 10, and for Map 3, I again gave a 9. I had a lot of fun blasting through these maps. I could picture myself coming back with some weapon mods just to have some fun. The overall gameplay, I think, was pretty much just what the creator was going for. There's not a lot of puzzles, and the ones that there are usually simple. The maps are mainly combat-oriented with smaller battles that still provide engaging, snappy encounters that I think would do perfectly for introducing younger kids to Doom. I'm disappointed the shoot switch only appeared once, but that's not a huge issue as it's literally like the first thing you do in the WAD, but there was only a little bit of improvement that I could say that would be done in terms of variety with the combat encounters. The first and the last levels are a little bit homogenous or samey throughout, but remain fun if not brief, and I think that's due to the map size to a degree. If you had a little bit more time and a little bit more space to work with in some areas, I'm sure there would have been a few more different traps and surprises, but overall pretty high level, fast-paced gameplay throughout all of the levels. Yeah, I'd say the quick, smooth gameplay is definitely the highlight of the WAD here. Finally, let's talk about my personal category, originality. For Map 1, I gave a 6, for Map 2, I gave a 7, and for Map 3, I gave another 6. So yes, this was the WAD's weakest aspect. There's nothing really unique here. The concept is more interesting and is pretty much all that really carries the identity or the personality really of the experience here. A little more time set aside to provide more interesting map layout, a little more of a directed focus on involving the WAD's core concept that is meant for children would have brought the experience up a lot more and really sold me on the idea. To give some examples of what I mean by this would be things like the visuals not exactly being very playful or eye-catching, something that's kind of important to keep kids interested, as well as the level and encounter design falling a little bit flat. More cases of what we had with the Rocket Rampage in Map 2 would be good, and I mean this more in a design sense rather than a gameplay sense. The combat scenarios should not necessarily be mechanically simple, but should be simple in approach, a situation where the best course of action is easily identifiable or easily visible. And yeah, I think the rocket section in Map 2 is just a perfect example of that kind of like design tailoring. And as I did say, the gameplay is like the high point here. Even just a few small touches in this category though, and I think it could have taken this WAD from like a decent little WAD to a much more impressive set of speed maps that are tailored for kids. So if we add up those numbers and average them out between these 3 maps, we get 23 and a third out of 30. And that is a B, just shy of B plus for today's recipient of the Unwarranted review. 24 would be B plus right on the nose if you're wondering. But I think the main thing that held this WAD back was the author having a little bit too much restraint. You can tell it's very competent, very by the numbers, getting all of the boxes checked, and you see that with a lot of speed maps, but that's why I feel kind of right to giving this just a B. If the author just put a little extra bit of time into any kind of like theme or consistent personality between the levels here, I think it would have made it really impressive. But I'll say it's still impressive he made these 3 levels in just a day and a half. That's still pretty cool. But remember, opinions are subjective except when they're mine, and this has been the final review for A WAD for Children by the very efficient author, Arthur. Thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for more reviews nobody asked for.